Well, welcome to the No Show. My name is Andrea Edwards.
My name is Joe Augustin.
And my name's Tim Wade. I'm back from my cruise.
Yeah, he's the one who's glowing amongst the three of us. I think he's got a nice post-holiday, sun-kissed, had a haircut look.
Well, no, not had a haircut. I just put some stuff in it. But I didn't spend too much time in the sun, to be honest. But I'm going to take all of that. I feel. I tell you what I do feel. I feel 5 kilos heavier. But it was good. It was good fun.
Great stuff. So this is the show that we try to take you on a bit of a journey where we hopefully end up where you are thinking about things a little bit more than you were when you first started off. And every week we introduce a guest to put in our midst as well to create some new thinking about what we're doing as well. And so, Tim, can you introduce our guest?
Sure can. Our guest of this week is Anupama Singal. So Anu is... well, in Andrea's words, Anu's an amazing person. But a little bit more about Anu's background: a fashion and technology entrepreneur, speaker, author, and catalyst from a transformational perspective. So it really helps those organizations change and run through change. She helps fashion companies see beyond tabular data. And making better decisions, driving profitability and productivity, very much in the fashion side. Anu, welcome to the No Show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Thank you so much. And Andrea and Joe for having me.
That's great. But how about you put it in your own language, what you do?
Yeah,
okay,
that sounds very LinkedIn-ish.
I work in 2 streams. So basically, I work with retailers and help them deploy technology solutions. So we have an innovative platform that helps them do more with their data and in a visual analytics way. And then I also started a fashion company 10 years ago called Annu, because I'm really, really passionate about body positivity and helping women with their confidence. So yeah, so that's what I do, a 2-stream person.
What's body positivity mean?
It just means that you are not afraid to own your own body in terms of how it looks and how it feels. And you don't try to kind of hide yourself in oversized, loose clothing. So I feel that from my perspective, of course, everybody has a different definition, but I do feel that if people can just own their curves a bit more, then they would feel healthier and fitter.
This is exactly what I want to hear after my 5 kilos from the cruise ship.
Well, I have to say, in terms of the clothes that I have as well, nothing is automatically loose anymore. So I think I'm getting there.
Yes, all your shirts have become crop tops for no apparent reason. Very nice. And Andrea, you're not really 100% today.
No, I'm not. Sorry, I've got a vision of Joe in a crop top. It's not a good vision.
It's tight in the thigh.
It's a self-rolling crop top, by the way, as well. So it depends on where it sits. It can go either way suddenly.
Uh-huh.
And he's got old-style boot roller skates on.
Oh, nice. Even better. Yeah, so I have to give you a heads up if I mute because I have to have a cough. The boys came home with a head cold from school. It's going around everywhere, and because of course there's been no viruses like that circulating. When they do circulate, they're a bit more ruthless than normal. So it's been a bit of a grimy old week, and I'm sounding very sexily husky, aren't I?
Yeah, you are. Actually, I think you need to sing some Fleetwood Mac.
Oh yeah, or Bonnie Tyler.
Yeah, Bonnie Tyler. Bonnie Tyler will be all right as well.
Yeah,
turn around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to hear me do that. All right, shall we get stuck into the news that really struck a chord this week? And then there's lots going on. Obviously, in the last couple of weeks, we've been really focusing in on COP26, and that hasn't gone away, and the environment crisis hasn't gone away. And I'll talk about the first of the environment stories in the second one. But I want to start with what's going on in Belarus right now. Have you guys noticed this story? It's I'm finding it unbelievably heartbreaking. It's a terrible story, but basically there's a humanitarian crisis at the border between Belarus and mainly with Poland, and it's a manufactured crisis. The Belarusian president has allowed refugees to fly into the country with one-way tickets, They are then being directed to the Polish border, as well as the Latvian, and there's another one, Lithuanian border, because they're all members of the EU. So they're being directed to these borders, but of course on the other side they're not allowing them in because especially Poland have been very, very, very anti-refugees. So there's a lot of different reasons for this. So first of all, it's Lukashenko basically having a strop because he wants EU to lift the sanctions and pay attention to him, because he had his election last year where he claimed 80% victory, which was not true. But there's some other sides to this story that I think is really important. You know, we're always talking about, look at all the different sides of the story. So is it him trying to, you know, make the EU do what he wants to do, which, you know, potentially is him blackmailing not just the EU, but Russia, and there's a prospect of a full-scale global war off the back of it, which is exactly what we need right now, right? But there's another side. So many are pointing fingers at Moscow, of course, and we would expect that from Western media, but they think that anything he's doing or saying has definitely got the approval from the Kremlin. And of course, this is all linked to the gas pipeline, which is called Nord Stream 2, and whether or not that goes ahead. So that's another part of the story. But there's also the third part of the story, which is a hostile Russia, and any trouble at Europe's eastern borders is benefiting certain political parties in the West. And this is where I think we need to be paying attention, because basically the lobbyists and what they call the military industrial complex, they like stuff like this because it means there's more budget for defense, which means there's more money being spent on defense equipment. So there's lots of things going on. Any way of fueling fears and divisions that helps somebody or something, right? And I think we need to be aware of it. But on the other side, the humanitarian side, here we have a group of people that are fodder or pawns in this dispute, and they're dying in freezing conditions. I think we need to remember that 50% of all refugees are children. So they're dying in these freezing conditions in Europe, and we've seen the situation with refugees across Europe for the last few years. Nobody wants to let them in. And we are facing millions of climate refugees in the very near future. Are we going to just be treating everybody the same way, or are we going to start to get ready for it? Are we going to start to build facilities that can take these people in so that they've got an opportunity to at least have some dignity or not die in the freezing cold? So there's a lot of different ways that this story can be looked at, and I really want to encourage everyone to look at all the different angles, not just accept one truth depending on where you are in the world. Apparently the crisis has now been de-escalated because they've flown 5,000 Iraqis back to Iraq, but it sort of shows the sort of games that political leaders are willing to play. And I've got to tell you another thing: how many more sociopathic, narcissistic leaders are going to be voted into positions around the world? Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a bit sick of them. I think it might be time for women to rule the world. What do you think?
Well, so long as they're not narcissists and sociopaths.
We haven't got any bad ones, have we? Bad examples of women being like that, have we? I haven't.
I don't know.
I can't think of one. Maybe going back into the time of queens and empresses, but not in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Well, we'll leave that one on the table for whether women should rule the world. But I'm shocked at how he's managed to do this. It's a landlocked country with Russia on Russia and Ukraine taking up the majority of their borders, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland on the other ones. And like you rightly said, all the people are stationed on predominantly Lithuania and Poland, I think, on those borders, and the EU standoff because he's got sanctions imposed on Belarus by the EU, which he wants lifted, and he keeps threatening to use let refugees cross the borders, while then also declaring that he isn't doing that, and then they're all there. And how they actually got there, because it's landlocked, it's not as if they've walked across and they genuinely let them in. People have escaped from their calamity to walk into another one. The challenge with your question, Andrea, which I thought was really good one, is how prepared is the world to take in refugees? with climate crisis is these sorts of political maneuvers are just locking people down to being against them. And then you're going to see political campaigns of we're going to lock our borders versus we're going to let people in and be humanitarian, and the lock borders person will win the election because people are fearful of losing what they have to what they think in their heads are sort of a bunch of homeless gypsies. So it's I just if I was a superhero, I'd be taking out people like this. That not taking them out, but I mean there would be the bullies, and the ones that are just doing these sorts of injustices are just the ones that I just feel. And again, what you said rightly as well is look at all the sides of the story, which I haven't. I mean, I don't know how many other sides of the story there are. I certainly haven't heard his side to the story, but it's it just sounds appalling.
Yeah. Like I can't claim to be in the know of everything on this, but I do feel that, like, having lived in a cold part of India, like all my growing up years, I do know how cold can affect people, and how it just like kind of makes you like, you can't do anything, like to the point when your hands and your feet are like, feeling so cold that you can't even properly breathe. And these people may not even have the privileges that we had, like, of having warm clothing, of having, a warm house and warm meals to have to heat ourselves up. So I think from that perspective, I do feel like, the more that all of us can talk about it and spread, this emotion, I think somewhere it does build up, momentum to solve, or work on issues like this. So I think, Andrea, like you're doing this on the No Show and bringing these issues to light for people to just think about it and, speak about it and get involved in some manner within their communities, I think spreads that. So
but the main thing is we've got to get prepared. We've just got to get prepared, and we've got to, the amount of women and children that are being sold into slavery because they're being picked up and kidnapped on these refugee trails, right? We've just got to get prepared. Give people a place to go, and they can stay there, and they can be warm, they can be fed. The charities can take care of them, and it could create jobs building these facilities. And then when we can work out where they can be distributed around the world, we've just got to start thinking about this sort of stuff. And that it doesn't come up, you didn't see it come up at COP26. These conversations aren't happening. So it just tells you that nobody's getting ready for it. That global leadership and global thinking is just, it's not happening. It's not pervasive, especially in the media. And I don't want to live in a world. I don't want my children to live in a world where, having the spears to keep people out. That's the sort of the stuff that you're seeing. And, the journalists have been kept out of the borders on both sides of the border in this crisis. So no one's getting the truth, and it's just, we can be better than that.
That maybe one of the reasons it doesn't get out as much in the news or people aren't doing it because it's actually being used in the whole situation by certain leaders. So it's like, I think you're right, and it's happening there today. Tomorrow it could be in another place, and so on. So, like, where does it stop?
Yeah. So I want to get onto the environment story. So obviously we've been really focused on that for the last couple of weeks, and Joe's been a great sport because it's not one of his sort of passion and focus areas. But you've been awesome. But I don't think any of us could have missed the story out of North America's West Coast this week. And the word unprecedented was used again. The worst weather storm in a century was the headline. And of course, when we've looked at what does it look at, like at 1.5, 2 degrees, 2.5 degrees, those once in 100 years events become once in 10 years, once in 2 years, right? All right. And I've never heard this phrase before. What happened was due to an atmospheric river. Is that the first time you guys have ever heard that term?
Well, I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm guessing it's a kind of a pushing of the heat stream or something like that. Was that what happened?
Yeah, so the water in warm water gets pulled up into the stratosphere, and then it goes up north and then it comes down into the mountains, and it created. And this is my, using big words explanation, obviously. But yeah, but have a look into it. But I've never seen that before, and it's not the last time it could potentially happen. But the infrastructure damage has been catastrophic, and they've been completely caught by surprise. So just to give you a feel, so from a supply chain perspective, we all know that supply chains are in a mess since the pandemic began, and it's going to be probably at least 12 months before they get back online, right? So right now, the ports on the west coast of Canada are completely cut off by road and by rail. And they are assessing the rail damage right now, and they have no idea when it'll be running again. The main highway that connects Metro Vancouver to the south, 750,000 commercial trucks transit this highway every year. It's gone. And they expect it to take several weeks or months to reopen. Highway 3 is impassable because the Fraser Canyon route has been smashed by rock slides and waterfalls that have burst out of nowhere. And there's so many other roads and catastrophes. There's even a place in America right up north near the Canadian border that used to be a river that got drained to become towns, and now it's a river again. Up to 18,000 people have been evacuated. And it's not like they can go home if their home is still there, because the gas pipes are broken, so they can't heat their homes. The water pipes are broken, so they can't get fresh water. The shops and the supermarkets are already out. So it's, and it's also a region that's been dealing with the wildfires and the heat dome from just a few months ago. So it's a giant mess. And one of the experts has basically said that they've looked at the hardest hit communities, and they're basically saying it's coinciding with some of the areas that have been logged the hardest, especially on the mountain ranges. So without the trees manage the water flow. So that's a problem. Also, the mountain pine beetle, which is a beetle that's moved up north into Canada and is destroying the trees. And of course, then the fires that destroyed the trees in the summertime. So basically, that's the accumulation of why all of this happened. So they're looking at it as a tipping point moment. And the word tipping point is not something that we want to hear right now. So yeah, so it's been, and this news is and they've got more storms on the way. So this is news that is potentially going to get worse. So it's been pretty big.
I wonder when they're going to start using the word precedented. This is very precedented. We should be using it more often. We should start making it more popular. So this is very precedented, and yet people aren't doing anything about it.
I don't like using words that other people are using. So if you make it common, I can't use it anymore.
I heard this first from Andrea.
No. I'm not taking responsibility.
We can come up with new words for you.
Yeah, well, okay.
Totally capable of manufacturing new words for you.
Well, if everything is unprecedented, at some point it's got to be precedented.
Yeah, so we're still in the unprecedented stage. Let's hope we don't move into the precedented stage, huh?
Yeah.
Let's be smart enough.
I mean, the thing is, you get these moments like Glasgow, which should be able to, people should be rattled enough to make some bigger decisions and take some bigger action. But fundamentally, economics always trumps sensibilities on, and really thinking insular as, I got to protect my own people and sell to everybody else. So we're still looking at profit over planet.
I don't know if we're looking at profit over planet. Sorry, Anu.
Go ahead.
No, so I think we've got another issue on our hands. So, we obviously all think about this a lot, but yes, it's profit. So we do have the businesses that are pushing for profit. Yes. And they want business to keep going. And
or is it power?
Yeah. But the power is the thing, right? And so right now, politicians cannot get elected on a climate ticket because enough of the people in their electorate aren't committed to the action that needs to be taken and the sacrifice that needs to be made. So until the people get the message that what is at stake and what we must do to change it, we're not going to vote for the politicians who've got the guts to change it, and we're not going to be able to force the businesses to change it. But because I think the other thing is businesses are in a bit of a bind because they know that in order to do what's right, like we have to face an economic catastrophe,
For sure.
basically.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like we're all in a bit of a stalemate. But
Yes.
Yep.
the main issue is us, the voters, and I think that's why I sort of focus my energy on, like, come on guys, come on, wake up, because as soon as you understand how big this is, like I just watched a video, Susanna Hassan-Hurl sent me a video of George Manabo crying on a TV interview because he understands what's at stake, and until people understand what's at stake and can comfortably cry on national TV, then we're not moving forward. So it's, to me, that's the bit that's missing. The not accepting the truth, not facing the truth, not hearing it, not wanting to confront it. I think that's what's at stake. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah. I think, like, just on what you were saying about Canada, like my brother-in-law lives there, and it's like the real struggle. They just moved into a new home and they want to get furniture, but for 3 months they can't get anything. Is it like whatever they are trying to buy, it's like, oh, it'll come like 3 months later, 4 months later. There's no visibility on what's happening. And I think one of the points that just now Tim and you both were mentioning, I think it's until it becomes somebody's like specific KPI and agenda. It's not just like, that, okay, the government wants to do something and they are doing it for power or for their people. I think it has to be that somebody needs to, within the government of every country, every region, there has to be somebody whose job is just that, not to do it as a side, but very specific down to something like, okay, this person is going to work on initiative A, and that's the only way. When it is their KPI, then it's going to get done. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, I know that, like, until we actually put somebody in charge of doing something very, very specific, it just doesn't get done as a group effort, right? Because everybody has their own things that they are running behind, and everybody has their own agendas, whether they be personal, political, organizational. But you have to put the task force, and that person, whoever is leading that task force, has to deliver something on that. So obviously, when people come together, yeah.
Sorry, mate. The problem is that
Yeah,
what we're seeing is so countries like France have introduced taxes on petrol, right?
Yes.
And basically, you may as well kiss your political career goodbye if you want to do something like that. We've seen it in Australia. We've seen it in Nigeria. We're just seeing these protests because the cost it has to be borne by all of us, and inequality is a big issue. So the poorest people and the poorest nations are going to suffer, the burden of the cost. They can't, so they're going to protest. So that's the other problem, is the people are rising up against the necessary changes, but you wouldn't be rising up against the changes if you could actually understand why the changes need to happen in the first place. So we need to work out how to roll this out around the world, where the wealthiest have to take on the burden of the cost, not the poorest, because as we've talked about before, the poorest countries on the earth need to work out how to harness energy so that they can have better lives without destroying the planet. And then the wealthier countries need to reduce the energy and also harness, better sources of energy so that they're also not destroying it. So it's a very complicated and messy thing, but at the same time, it's not. Like, the richest countries need to reduce their emissions significantly, drastically, immediately within this decade. The poorest countries need investment from the richest countries to work out how to harness energy in a way that's not going to kill the environment. And the poorest people can't cop the financial burden of this, because they're going to go backwards when they've just started to move forwards. So that's the thing that, that's the balance that we're trying to make. We have to come down, they need to come up, but we sort of need to meet in the middle where the energy we use, because, if you look at, some of the greatest books that have ever been written, have you guys read Why the West Rules for Now? And there's another one, Diamond, I can't remember his name. And humans move forward when we learn how to harness energy. That's where progress is. It's always around energy. The energy that we harnessed over 100 years ago is now destroying the stability of our Earth. So we need to harness a new form of energy to help us all move forward. That's kind of at the bottom of it.
I think it has a lot to do with impact in a much more tangible way. I think the problem with a lot of these big problems where everyone understands the idea that the big problem is there. It's just that when you do the thing that's to try and change that problem or try to fix the problem, how much of it is going to make that much of a difference? How do you know you're making a difference? And let's say everybody gets together and does this one thing. It's such a slow thing. It's like, it's like turning the steering on a ship and trying to look out the window and go like, what's happening? And everyone's still working on this, but it's going to take a really long time of that consistent behavior that's going to make a result that we'll see in a while. And I think human beings are just not set up that way. I was just thinking about what this might be the equivalent of is like, you hear many times of the story of someone who's cut off their arm to save their life, right? They're stuck in an adventure situation and they've done that. But the truth is most people aren't going to be able to do that, to make that sacrifice, which is for the bigger thing that has to happen. So the livelihoods that we have that may be based on traditional energy sources or other ways of doing things that may not be as friendly. And let's say you're working in the fashion industry, for you to say, I'm going to cut off my hand right now so that I can move forward and do the next thing well, it's quite a challenge.
It's very challenging, Joe. It is true. And what Andrea said just now, which is that if a leader puts in a particular kind of tax which doesn't resonate with the masses, they're not going to get it through, and there's going to be an outbreak because of that. And I think that if you just think of it as an organization who's trying to build momentum or market themselves, right? Unless that urgency or that effect of whatever is going on is actually felt by the individual person on the street, right? People are not going to get it as well. So I think it's not just like putting a tax or putting a policy which kind of imposes something on the people. The people need to understand, why this is being done. And if people don't talk about it and don't share all the details and don't try to rally, and it is happening. I'm not saying that it's not happening. People are getting together, right? People are creating within their community. So just a small example, I come from a fashion institute and we have a WhatsApp group. And just a couple of days ago, somebody shared in that and asked the question that there are so many big fashion leaders in this group, right? People are around between 40 to 55 years old in that group. And it's like, how many of you have changed the way you use poly bags, right? Are they have people totally done away with it, or are they totally recyclable material, packaging material is being used and all? And the conversation is still going on in the chat because it is difficult to change. It's not easy, so leaders are making changes, right? But until it is felt by the consumers and the consumers understand that why we are not getting this information on the package or why we are not getting our product packaged like this, it's not going to change. So it's actually to change bottoms up.
Yeah, no, but we need to actively educate ourselves. So buying fashion, the fashion industry is a great example of absolutely atrocious. It hasn't changed at all. The big major brands and the lack of dignity in the supply chain, the environmental pollution, and it hasn't changed. And to me, there's just there's no excuse for it. Deforestation for the leather, so we have our luxury bags. There is no excuse for it. This is an industry, and I'm not talking about people like you and your size of business, Anu, but the big global brands. They dumped the supply chain employees when the pandemic broke out and abandoned them. They didn't pay. They didn't pay for the goods that had been produced. They just abandoned them.
I know. I have we have friends who were running factories, and they were scrambling, how to pay the people, how to keep feed their families and so on. So it's actually been very tough. And in fact, the whole there's a big community of factory owners in Bangladesh that services the whole the world, right, with manufacturing. And they were just they had to get together and just kind of say that we are going to boycott you and we are not going to service you when the things get okay if you don't clear your outstanding bills. Because the things were shipped, right? And typically there's a certain period after which they receive the payment. So if the goods are already shipped and now you don't pay, right, the factories, how are they going to run?
And
So,
but we'll go back and buy those clothes from those fashion brands again and ignore
yes.
what they did to essentially their employees. You know, it might be a supply chain, they might not be
Yeah.
direct employees, but you know, we can't buy those clothes unless they get made, you know, at that sort of cost, which is why they go there. But the other interesting part about the whole fashion industry is they've now been abandoned a second time because of COVID. So countries like Vietnam, they've decided to move their production facilities into Eastern Europe because they can't get the fashion made in Vietnam. So now they're abandoning them again, you know. And it's like, when do we, the people, say, well, I'm not supporting a brand that behaves that way? And so that's the other thing. It's like we turn a blind eye to the truth of, you know, we wear these clothes or we buy these items and people suffer and the environment suffers, but we still buy them and we still support the businesses that make them. So the businesses aren't changing. Well, come on, you know.
And a lot of consumers are changing. A lot of consumers are changing, because I think there is a lot of noise being made about this, and people are changing. Maybe
Yeah.
we need to talk more, right? We definitely need to talk more.
Which
From
brands were doing it?
Huh?
Which big brands were doing it?
Well,
All of them.
I can speak about Coach because I've been doing a show for them the last couple of years, and what I was pretty impressed by was what they were doing in response to having a more environmental approach to doing things. And when I heard what they did, I thought that's a cleverer way of doing it than saying, let's go and flip the switch completely. We're not going to do 100%. But what they've done is they've given themselves quotas on how much they can use, which is so this is not going to sit well with the pure environmentalists to say you should be 100% reusable or reused material. But they have specified now that a percentage of whatever they do in store, whether it's store decorations, whether it's bags, whether it's new equipment, has to be made from reused material. So they've specified at least 25%, I think was the number that they had. I want to make sure that I'm not crossing any NDAs, that I'm not supposed to reveal the information I found out. But so that kind of stuff is what they're doing. And they're also working on a few new lines as well. What they've done is taken this need by the consumer to be more socially responsible as well, or environmentally responsible, and they've turned that into a business opportunity, right? So I know that doesn't sit well with some people, but I always think business, actually, when you have a good business motivation to drive something, it kind of gets done. So they are devoting some energy to creating stores that will sell only reused or refurbished or repurposed Coach as well. So, you know, old Coach becomes new again and they resell it. So they're actually going to have some impact. It has a positive impact in terms of the commercial side of their business. And I think that the staff feels really good about that as well, because now they feel they're no longer, or they don't feel that they're no longer part of that. They feel that they're on the better side in terms of being in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
So I think that there are definitely people who are doing something about that. And I would watch Coach to see what happens with them in the next few years, because they're doing it right in terms of what they say they want to do. I think they're engaging the staff in the process as well. And the customers are responding to it. They've done really well this past year.
Yeah. No, I'm a Coach fan, but, you know, again, you know, Amazon deforestation hit a record 15-year high to this, just reported this week, right? Where do Coach and all the other luxury brands get their leather from? You know, is it from the deforestation? You know, and it's those sort of questions. And the consumer has to work really, really, really hard to find the information and make sure that they're buying the brands that are really doing the good work. And, you know, I'm happy to hear the Coach is moving in the right direction, but the industry as a whole has not changed. They have not changed. And the fast fashion section of the industry is the biggest problem, especially because they're full of plastic as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a big one. But so, you know, COP26, obviously, there's been a lot of talk since, and very reflective, deep, thoughtful thinking. I think the consensus is that it was a failure. Many are speaking of progress, but as I said last week, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, this would have been progress. Now it's just alarming, and you know what we've seen in Canada is a sign of escalation, right? One summary said the poor came away with next to nothing. There's little urgency, and we're still heading for catastrophe. So the idea that we were going to rein in emissions so that we didn't pass 1.5 is definitely not going to happen. So, you know, so we obviously saw what we saw in North America, but then, of course, in New Delhi, they've experienced one of the worst Novembers on record for pollution in the city. They've actually had to the irony is they had to close down the coal facilities around Delhi to see if they could stop the toxic pollution. And of course, I don't blame India for the situation we're in. They've said they're going to get down to net zero by 2070, but then Modi very cleverly said, give us $1 trillion, we might be able to do it sooner. But they were the country that led the fuel lobby to change the language from phase out to phase down of coal power. So, you know, it's kind of a bit of irony as well this week. But if you go to Delhi in November, this is the time for the really bad pollution, because of course the farmers are also burning up north, and that's a big part of it as well. But that kind of felt a bit ironic for me. I don't know, anyone else looking at that one?
Well, I was looking back at COP26 in terms of what happens on the sidelines of it, and I hear a different kind of enthusiasm when I hear about the technologists who gather and share ideas, because I think there is a lot of galvanization of when I think there's more than just the policy people that come together. They're the business people, the innovators, the entrepreneurs, and people who are really trying to find some solutions to the problems. And when they come together and they try to fix those problems, I think there's more coming out of that. So I think to call it a failure on its surface may be valid at this point, because I think in terms of what it's been able to produce right now, if you measure it a week after the fact, yeah, maybe that's the case. But I'm hoping that, you know, at this big gathering where people from many kinds, many parts of industry, in types of industries as well, when they come together, that they can come together and create something that is going to make a difference, right? Because I mean, I'm in the crypto space. I like what it represents, but I also know people who are using blockchain technology and other stuff for good as well. So I'm certain that there are some people who are very wealthy, who have become wealthy because of crypto, and right now they're interested in other areas as well, and they're trying to sort those problems out. And I think what you'll see a lot of technology being integrated into stuff like fashion, for instance, so that you'll be able to know for sure if this leather came from, you know, a source that is not, well, if not undamaging, at least where they're trying to make some compensation for it. You know, there's a lot of stuff happening. Technology, finance. It's not always bad people who make money. It's also people who come up with new solutions or ways to measure and to track things. So I'm hoping that out of COP26, you're going to find the people who are going to figure a better case for responsible building, responsible steel, who figure a much better way to figure out you know, energy, for instance. Somewhere in there, someone maybe realized or figured out a way to do nuclear energy in a safe way. If someone figured out how you could do that, or even a next level of energy consumption or production that would change the world, it'd be driven by something like COP.
I like your hope. I do. But
was there any version of, was there any oracle looking into a crystal ball where Glasgow could have been hailed a success? Because I can't see how it could have. I just
the only potential success that I heard was that fossil fuels were used in the documentation for the very first time. So the use of the words, I thought that was quite remarkable. Well, they've used it for the first time. Oh, good, we've got a chance.
in about 2235. But so it's one of those things where I think you nailed it actually, Andrea, at the earlier in the show, where it was about, because the politicians are driven by votes about staying in power. And if the people, if they can get away with not doing anything and staying in power, they will.
Yep.
I don't know, this picture is coming to me like the Earth. If the Earth was heading directly towards the sun, for whatever reason, we stopped orbiting and we're heading directly towards the sun. This is a bad analogy in one sense, because the only solution out of this is probably to have coal-fired everything to blast our way away from the sun. But it's like the planet is heading towards the sun, which gives us a definite timeline of boiling to death. And we've all gone to a meeting and gone, you know what? Let's just talk about the wording and keep everything normal. And then, you know, are we all patting ourselves on the back? Well, no, we're still heading towards the sun. It's like, what are we doing to get away, to change anything? And so it's almost like politicians needed to be forewarned that if you don't get a result, you will be voted out in the next election. And that there was enough people signing a petition, you know, or enough to get them to go, wow, there's 5 million people have signed this. If you don't come up with something, we're going to vote you out. I mean, maybe that could have been the thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, all we'd be hearing now is them, if nothing had changed, that they would be trying to spin what had happened, what they tried to do, or finger pointing, you know, and blaming India or something like that. But fundamentally, then it comes down to it. I can understand India saying we need the coal power because we've got over 1 billion people and we need to do X, Y, and, you know, we're going to keep them warm and we're going to fire this up and everything else. But, you know, you give India $10 billion or $1 trillion to do something about it, and you give some other country $1 trillion. And my gut feel is that the disorganization and the corruption will see the result in India not be as effective as that other place, for example. So then it comes down to the fact that we just don't trust the people who are doing it, and the fact that India was leading it, and it does kind of make sense. You know, kind of goes, then makes me think, if I was the coal lobbyists, who would I pay to champion my cause? And if I could pay them and they championed it, then I've won. They've got paid. And so then it all comes down to nobody trusts anybody anymore.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to, we need to remove the people that we don't trust. And then that comes down to us voting, but we can't vote for India. So,
no, but Tim, I think it was something very interesting comes to my mind listening to you. I'm no expert on this, right? In fact, like, I don't know too much details about this. But as you were saying this, it reminded me of recently somebody posted a video on TikTok, and basically what she was saying was that how do people get into positions of power in politics, right? It's through voting, but there are many ways to get the votes. Why is there no entrance examination into this whole system? Like, people should be kind of, you know, assessed on their understanding of the issue, what they can do with it. Like, even a simple, like, 16-year-old or 17-year-old, he wants to become an engineer in India, he has to go through so much of competition. These days, the cutoff in India in the best of Delhi universities or the simplest of Delhi universities is about 98, 99%. So, like, if you didn't get 98, 99% as a score, you're not going to get a college seat. And that's like millions of students, right? So how are we choosing the leaders who are going to take us through all these challenges, which are global challenges present everywhere, right? Is there something that can be initiated, that these people are first educated about the issues and how to solve the issues, and then build them into these positions of power, not just through, like, voting of people who may not even understand that these issues exist, like an average person on the street like myself. I don't know, I don't claim to understand many of these issues in detail, right? But I can still go and vote for someone who may not be even like 5%, having 5% skills to solve this.
It's interesting, actually. You make an interesting point in that. What qualifications does somebody have to be a politician? In a sense, right?
Usually they're good speech givers.
Well, television seems to be it, right? So America just had one because of television, and the elections seem to be one now based on television. Who else got in for television?
But it goes back to the Roman times. It was
the orators, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. And being charming and being eloquent. Obviously, being intelligent is usually a good thing to have, but not always necessary.
It falls out of fashion. I think intelligence has fallen out of fashion in recent times. I think people have way too much self-confidence based on nothing particularly to back it up, right? So they're very confident of their ideas and what they can do, but the basis of it is not very strong frequently. So
I blame motivational speakers.
Well, it could be a lot of things. I mean, it's like if you look at what's happening in terms of the internet, for instance, in terms of like what you see in terms of social media, who succeeds, what kind of people succeed. The impression you get, and because there's very little documentary proof otherwise, is that, well, that's the sign of that's how success is created in the world today. That's the world we live in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. My daughter is in no way a shallow person, but she's. I asked her what would she like to do, and she kind of looked at it and went like, being famous would be nice. I mean, she recognizes there's something about being a celebrity, and I thought that was an interesting insight, because it means that somewhere inside all of us, we recognize that there is something attractive about that particular way of living, or just being famous and wealthy, whatever it is, right? Something about that is attractive. And if we see that pursuing those things pays off dividends, then it makes us go, okay, well, let's try and do that, right?
Yeah, the end justifies means, in a sense.
Yeah,
But the percentage of success in that space is about the same as the percentage of being able to become a billionaire or a trillionaire. It's 0.000001% of people who actually become successful at it. So, influencer or YouTube star is one of the categories of children career options today. Obviously, we never had that when we were kids, right? So, it's on the table. But I don't know. You kind of look at around.
But this is not to say that it becomes the ambition that they choose for themselves. But I'm just saying that what it does is it reflects what human beings are about. We're a flawed, we're a creature flawed by design. In terms of making the best choices for ourselves. I think even as an individual, even as someone who's really smart, you have all the brain, you have all the energy and education, you can make a bad decision about something, right?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So I'll argue the point that we're not flawed by design, but we're flawed by choice, and we make some pretty selfish choices. And I think what we're looking at from the global side is a lot of selfish choices. Belarus, a bunch of selfish choices coming to play. I think if you look at why somebody wants to be an actor, as you were saying that, there was two things popped into my head. One was, well, three things actually. One was me wanting to be an actor, and then looking at the percentage of success, like Andrea just said, and deciding it's too risky to go down that path. And so I will do, something else instead. And then the second thing that came into mind was, it was Tony Robbins actually sort of saying the reason why somebody wants to be famous is actually to be loved and appreciated. Is that they think that a lot of people will adore them, they will be validated, they'll be worthwhile. And then the third thing that came into mind was The Matrix. In the movie The Matrix, and that reminds me, December's coming out, which means the next one's coming out, which is very exciting. But in The Matrix, the evil guy Cypher was sitting there with Mr. Smith, and he was eating a steak, and he was saying, "I know it's fake," and everything else. And anyway, he was making a deal to betray them all. but he would be put back into the matrix, and Mr. Smith was like, "What do you want?" And he goes, "I want to be important, like an actor." And
But like
because it was,
Tim, and Joe, I think there's another side to it, which is like if you ask some of the kids, they also have some agenda. Like they want to do something, they want to impact or influence, and that's why they want to become famous or like go viral. And it's not just all about the fame. Like I'll just take simple example of my son. He has some special needs, and from the longest time that I can remember, maybe he was 5 or 6 years old, he said he wants to go viral on YouTube. And I was like, what are you going to do with it? Like, why do you want to be viral? Like, just as a kid, he would keep drawing these stick men and trying to make like little videos or something with it. And then he said that I want to educate everybody about special needs. So it was not so much just like to be famous. It's
Yeah.
also like they have something like, and I think if we can as guides or people around them, like whoever wants to be famous, and if we just delve a little bit deeper and tie into that thing of what is the impact and influence that the person can bring about, right, just by being famous or going viral, or it's a catch 22, because you do something and then you get famous, right, and then you do more of the good stuff which helps in some way and contributes to our community and the world. I know you do a lot of stuff, Tim, right? So a lot of good work that you do. So it's like if you can have more influence and impact, then you can do more.
True to an extent, but what I think we're talking about two different things, because the work Yashi's doing is brilliant, absolutely brilliant, right? And he's got a purpose. When I talk to my boys, they want to go and launch a gaming channel. I'm like, why do you want to do it? Everybody's doing that. Go and think of something unique. Go and do something nobody else is doing. Go and make an impact. Go and do something meaningful. And I'll show them kids doing beautiful things, going, look at this little girl in Nigeria. Isn't she amazing, doing all this beautiful work, to try and inspire them towards that. But I remember doing a speech for APSS, our community in Singapore, and it was about becoming an iconic speaker. And I asked everyone at the beginning how many people in the room wanted to become an iconic speaker. And basically everyone put their hands up. And then I talked through the cost of being iconic. And then I said, hey, how many people still want to be iconic? And only about 25% of people put their hands up. The cost of fame isn't widely understood. It's not. And there is a cost to it. So, but I'll just to wrap up the environment thing. There's two stories that I think you guys will appreciate. The first one is the top gas exporters on the back of COP26 have basically said that they are the victim of cancel culture, which I thought was awesome. It's in an official submission to United Nations, and the ongoing reductionisms and cancel culture on hydrocarbons. So I thought that was pretty good. You poor little things. But the other thing the other piece of news that sort of really...
They're gas traders. They're full of hot air.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently the COVID deniers are now switching to climate denial. Yes, so I think we've all got to get ready for much more of that, conspiracy theories around that. Look, I just want to talk to the conspiracy theories. I've read David Icke's books. I always dig into the conspiracy theories and try and understand them. I understand that they're very intelligent. They're very alluring. They always have some truth in them as well, which is why you kind of sort of start to believe them. Yes, and so I get it. But I also know that then there's not consistency. So for David Icke, for me, the inconsistent moment was when Barack Obama was elected, and the way he was speaking about people of color before and the way he spoke about people of color after, that was a real sign of inconsistency, just as an example. So I just want to say to anyone who decides to look into these theories, go for your life. But please remember, when you think the people that you think are the ones who are trying to control us, they are often the ones who are guiding these conspiracy theories. So just keep your eyes open. That's all I'm going to say. Conspiracy theories are alluring, I get it, but there's always inconsistencies, and the climate crisis is not a conspiracy theory. And every time I hear people saying, talking about the people who are going to profit from it, well, actually, that's kind of not the point of what we're trying to fight against. The people who are trying to hold on to not changing are the ones who are risking the profit. So just wanted to make that one clear. Tim, you had a look at it as well?
Yeah, I would speak to the conspiracy theorists in a slightly different way, and I would say to them and if they're listening, I am saying to you, you have a unique set of skills that are desperately needed in the world today. You have the ability to rally, you have the ability to argue and debate, you have the ability to, you have the courage to speak out for something. And my challenge is, with what Andrea was saying, was choose a fight that will save the world. Choose something like that. The choose one that, if you're wrong, good comes out of it, and if you're right, you save the planet.
Yeah.
Because the other side is, I mean, I talked about this a few months ago. I thought, with my sort of 2x2, yeah. It was if you're wrong and the planet dies, and if you're right, you're smug. That's not the best version. If you're right and the planet thrives, and if you're wrong, people are helped, that's the real win-win.
Yeah.
So it's choose the one where, if you're right, there's good, and if you're wrong, there's good. That to me makes the most logical sense, to use your skill. And then the other one is, if you've got this capability and you've chosen the virtuous road, then get elected. Use that voice and that intelligence in a way that is going to make transformational difference to the planet. But those two prerequisites that Anu was talking about before, from how do we select, those two prerequisites there, you've got the skill, you got to choose the options where there's a real win-win, and it's other people's winning here. So it's sort of saying, use your skills for goodness and not evilness.
Yeah. Nice. Should we
Batman, not a Joker? Yeah.
Should we jump into COVID? So Europe's become the epicenter again. I'm sure you guys have seen it with both fourth and fifth waves. So we had Angela Merkel stating that Germany's been hit with the full force of COVID. They had nearly 53,000 cases reported just on Wednesday. Belgium and Holland obviously on red. Austria locked down its unvaccinated, and I found that really remarkable. Pfizer have made an announcement that they're going to make their pills available in a generic version in 95 countries. But I'm going to try and say it. Medical Sans Frontières, MSF, that's it from now. I'm not going to try and say it again. Yeah, they're a bit disheartened by the deal because it excluded Argentina and China, both countries which have really big generic drug manufacturing facilities, and have stated the world knows by now that access to COVID-19 medical tools need to be guaranteed for everyone, everywhere, if we really want to control this pandemic. Another part of the pandemic news was American deer have now been reported to have the virus. It's still the same form of the virus. It hasn't mutated yet, or there's no variants, but apparently that's going to change the course of the pandemic. And then
why was I didn't see I saw the headline, but I didn't read the article. What was the deal with the deer? Is it people eating the deer, or is it just the way that they spread it?
Yeah, the way it's spread, and obviously the variations and mutations that can come as it continues to go through the breed, which sort of roams all over the country, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So far, what's interesting about COVID and animals is that the animals do get it, and I think the main concern that we do have is whether or not they can transfer back to humans.
Yeah.
And the evidence of that still seems to be, it's not as clear. Well, I won't say not as clear. Actually, the evidence seems to indicate it doesn't happen. But of course, it does interest the public when they hear about deer getting, catching COVID. You hear about lions in the zoo, and you go like, you're always interested in that. So that's the way we are, where we're attracted to sort of different, interesting, weird, and wonderful, right? So if something comes up that way in that category, we will pay attention to it. Not terribly consequential.
2 weeks we can solve that problem, though, Joe. In about 2 weeks' time, there's going to be Santa Clauses everywhere, and we just need to test them to see if it transmits between the deer and the humans.
Nice.
Thank you very much. I'll be here till Thursday.
But I think the deer is different.
Try the veal, not the deer.
I think the deer is different because it hasn't. Okay, so once it's in the deer, so they roam and go wherever they go, right? And and the mutations, the variants sort of followed them around. But then that's the possibility of coming back into humans from the deers. But it isn't necessarily from them to us. It could be from them to another animal, and then back to us. So I suppose it's to me, when I read the story,
nature?
Well, exactly. So when I read the story, I don't think it's an immediate threat, but I thought it was an interesting twist from a COVID perspective. And I did hear about the lions at the Singapore Zoo. Are they all right?
They're all on the mend, so not great news for the rest of the creatures they feed on, but yeah.
Well, you can feed them infected deer at least.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
All right, and there was one more vaccines COVID story in New Zealand that New Zealand was pretty late to the party from a COVID vaccine perspective, and the anti-vaccine protests, which we've obviously seen in New Zealand, Australia, and everywhere in the world, they've been using the haka in their protests, and the Maori tribe that owns the right to that haka have basically said stop using it, and I find it a particularly insensitive use. Because the Indigenous people around the world are the ones who are most impacted by the pandemic. Over 70% of the Maori community has had at least one vaccination. The numbers were higher than I thought they would be, but obviously for that community, COVID is a huge threat. So that was another story that came out through the week. So that's my COVID wrap up. Any others that you grabbed?
I did see the haka one. I found that one bizarre. I was trying to, because I get the Maori group who are saying that's our haka. Don't use our haka in your protest. I was just like, how are they using the haka in the protest? I mean, what?
Just to express the anger and angst that goes along with being coerced into a.
It's like it's all wrong. Whoever came up with that idea was just dumb. They just wanted to get on television or something. It's just anyway. Okay.
Would it be okay if it ended off in the rugby game? Is that basically what we need?
No, the Kiwis will win, but we don't want that again.
All right, shall we go into our theme for the week? And we're talking about imposter syndrome. So this is something I think most of us suffer to some extent in our lives, right? I think for many, it can be really, really crippling and actually really reduce what they're capable of achieving in their life. So we're really happy to have Anu here with us today. As we were talking about earlier, body positivity is one of your things, but imposter syndrome, what is it? What are the challenges that people face who have it? How do we identify it? How do we overcome it? So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrea, for bringing this. Because I think there have been many times in my life, like I feel that I wouldn't do something just because of feeling that, I wasn't in that space. So for example, right, even today, I wouldn't have joined this conversation because Tim, what are you doing?
Sorry, I thought this is what we're talking about with imposter syndrome.
Oh, really?
Not?
No.
Oh, sorry, excuse me.
What are you? Okay, tell me. So why do you think wearing that wig and the teeth makes you, like, what does it make you feel?
Look, imposter syndrome is feeling like you shouldn't be there, right? Is it?
Not exactly. I mean, there are various theories about it and people feel about it differently. But I think if you just simplify to a simple thing, it's like saying that feeling of fraud, right? So you feel like, okay, you know it, right? But you don't want to put yourself out there because you think that other people know more. So, for example, I was just saying before you distracted me with that wig.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. The timing
right?
probably wasn't
No, it's okay. It's like, the show, I would have, when Andrea asked me, I would have probably just said no, right? Like, because I don't feel like I can talk about so many issues in the world that are happening. I do feel passionate about many of them, and I do read a little bit, and I try to follow and make sense of it all, but there's just too much happening, right? And there's a lot going on. So unless you made it your business like Andrea has, right? And she's very passionate about a lot of things, people don't know. They don't have enough facts, maybe, But even in the area of work, this feeling percolates. So, if you're a perfectionist, right, the last 2-3% of anything that you do can take you much more effort and energy and time than what you spend doing the first 98%, right? Because if you just feel that, oh, if you don't get this right, people will think that you don't know your job or you didn't do it, the way you wanted it to. And then there are like, other people who are experts, right? So they're expert in a certain field. They have this thing that I need to know everything before I can get into it and start working on it. Many of our politicians are not, right? So that's what we were saying, that maybe it's like you don't take on anything because you have that fear of failure, or the fear of being called a fraud or a fake in a particular area. And I started getting interested into this, I think, quite early in life, because I went to a college where I went into an engineering college, and typically the male to female or boys to girls ratio was like 30-40 is to 1. So like in my class of 41 or 42 people, there were just 2 girls. In some streams, there were no girls at all, right? So the major thinking, or the generic thinking, I would say, is that, okay, this is not for girls, right? That's why you don't have so many girls there. So the very fact that I was there should have made me feel that, yes, I'm more capable, but the general, thinking in the society around it made me always doubt that, am I in the right place? Or, can I do this really well? And there were times like, in the class, like, people would come up and offer. So like we had this mechanical engineering class, and we had to make some things on the lathe machines and like use these big hammers. And the lab assistant came to me and he said, you won't be able to do it, give it to me. And literally, even before I could stop him, that, no, I can do it, I feel I can do it, he just took the thing from my hand and he just finished it in one stroke, right? So what I'm trying to say is that sometimes it's the environment around you which makes you feel like that, and sometimes it's your own thinking. So if you're somebody who's like, really driven to be, like you said, if I was a superhero, I would go and take out these guys, right? So there's something in you which makes you feel that you can do it, right? And then you want to do it. But imposter syndrome is that you feel that you won't be able to do it to perfection and you will get found out. So you kind of back off. You don't have that full confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
And why, what do you think, Andrea?
No. I think you've nailed it. But I think what's confusing about imposter syndrome, because it seems to be predominantly female, but it's not just a female issue.
It's not.
Is
It's not.
Sheryl Sandberg said that she had it
Yes.
in her current position, doing what she's doing in the world right now. So she said that she had it, and it's this fear of being found out. Like you said, the fear of being found out to be a fraud.
Yes.
But a lot of the people that I know that have had it, it actually doesn't make sense why they think that, right? So there's
yeah. I mean, if you think of it like a process, it's like it's typically related to some kind of achievement related things, or tasks or goals. And then you want to achieve something, you want to finish something, but you have this anxiety and self-doubt that whether you can actually finish it to perfection.
Yeah.
Right? So you tend to over prepare, you tend to take a little bit more time, right? And even though you have accomplished it, so let's say you finished it and you did it, but there's always this feeling of doubt that, did I do it completely? Did I do it perfectly? And then even if people come and tell you that, oh, you did great, but because of that whole niggling self-doubt, you think that, no, they're just saying it, and just discount it, and no, I didn't do it right. And then it's like a cycle. So the next time you go and tackle another project, the same feelings come up, right? So it's like, again, you think that even though people told me that I did well, but you yourself, you kind of played down. So I think I did some research about it. I used to lead a team, and I had a lot of women in the team. I worked at Levi's for 15 years. So over different periods, I would always find that some of the women, they were very good at their tasks, right? But they would always kind of not take that stage, take the limelight. They would do all the work and then give it to another team member and say, you go and present it. And I was like, why are you doing this? Because I've seen you do this. And they're like, it's okay because, like, if somebody says something, it's like he can take the credit. And I was like, but why? It's like, because I'm not sure. What if they ask me questions? And I was like, you can say that you don't know, you'll get back on the work. So I think sometimes it's just that feeling of doing it, owning it, that yes, there are parts that I may not be comfortable with. And I can stand up and say that I'm not comfortable about it, but I can get back. Right. So if you just face that fear, right, that, yeah, I have done it. I know 95%, but this 5% I'm not sure of. But I can face the questions by saying, I am not sure about it. I don't have to give all the answers on the spot to people. I don't have to be answerable to each and everything which surrounds this whole thing.
Yeah.
Have you faced, any of you have faced this? Like, do you feel like sometimes
Oh,
like you've done
100%.
something?
All the time.
Yeah, I don't know why the idea that it's a thing that women suffer from more than men is a thing, because I don't think I go by any day when I'm doing something significant where I don't have that sense of like, oh my goodness, So even coming on this show, I feel a level of stress before that, because I don't think I'm the guy who should be doing this. But there's also that other part of you that allows you to break through that feeling, But it's a very normal thing, and I really think it comes back to traditional parenting, right? I mean, sit down and shut up. That kind of voice comes along with you, and then if you, especially when you are brought up in an environment where I guess being right is important, that might have some impact on how you look at whether or not you have the right to be speaking or right to be taking the space that you are attempting to take.
Yeah.
So
I did hear
That's
Cheryl's.
sorry, Tim.
I was going to say, I did hear Cheryl's. I do think, I definitely men and women have it as well. So it's, but I do think that there is a cultural conditioning that disadvantages women, or girls in particular. And Sheryl Sandberg, I heard her speak about it, and she was talking about just the words that we use to describe the behavior of a boy versus the behavior of a girl. The boy would call as a leader, the girl would call as bossy.
Yeah.
Would say that the little girl is being bossy, but the little boy is being a leader, and they're doing exactly the same thing. And so so then we give these sorts of stereotypes.
Exactly.
Well, we apply a stereotype that we have onto the kids, so that they don't feel that they're doing the right thing and that they don't belong to behave. Well, they're not allowed to behave in a particular way, or that it's wrong.
And
So,
Tim, like, that's so true, and that's something like that I have really faced a lot, and I really talk about it, in many forums, which is breaking stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of people say that stereotypes are, widely accepted beliefs or thoughts about a certain type of people or a culture or a region or something like that. Like, girls wear pink, boys wear blue. Girls are not good at maths. South Indians are good at coding. Like, so there are a lot of these kind of stereotypes, right? But what I really tell people, and I tell myself all the time, is that it's your personal stereotype. So there is something in your own head which is your own stereotype, and you have made this image and told yourself that I am this kind of person. And then for you to break out of that is when you would be able to break the imposter syndrome. So a lot of times you just think that, okay, I'm not good at this. So for myself, it's like, okay, I'm not good at general knowledge. So I married a guy who's very good in general knowledge. I mean, that's a true.
Is that why you married him?
That's a very extreme way to get general knowledge.
An extreme way to win Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah, on the first date, it was like, so what's the capital of Kazakhstan?
Exactly. So you could ask Bikash those kind of questions, right? But Tim, it's not a laughing matter. This just shows the conditioning that I grew up in as well. I'm from a family of academicians, so my parents were not really hard on me, but everybody was like a professor or a PhD or a double DSc or something like that, right? So I felt the pressure that I need to know everything. And that is one of the key mistakes, that people think that instead of just their area, they are trying to compare their one knowledge to the combined knowledge of hundreds around them, and then feeling insecure and inadequate, right? So I'll just leave you with this concept of STT and SBT. So there's this thing called stereotype threat theory and stereotype boost theory. And the whole logic is that if there is a negative thing attached to a certain stereotype, you tend to kind of, reduce your performance or your effectiveness if you associate with that stereotype. So if I'm as a girl, if somebody said that, okay, girls are not good at maths, and I believed in that, my mathematical abilities would go down, right? But the good news is that the reverse is also true. That stereotype boost theory. So if there is something that you can believe that, okay, girls do it better, right, you will find that your performance will go up. So this is something that I have been using like for a long time now. I can't even remember, but for many years. That if there's something that I feel like, that it's pulling my performance down, right, I tend to kind of make something in my mind and say that this is what I can do better. And then use that as an example to say, I up my performance and I can, kind of cut through this whole imposter syndrome. So if something like, just to give you a live example about my own self, if I am feeling that I can't step into something, and I feel like, what do I bring to that situation, right? So in my case, I feel that my energy is good. I bring good energy. And if I firmly believe in that I bring good energy, and then I tell myself that I may not have the facts, I may not have the skill set, I may not have the knowledge, but can I go there and take my energy with me to that room? And will it help the people in the room?
Nice.
And that helps me to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you took yourself out of yourself and started to say, it's like a speaker going on stage, wondering what's everyone going to think of me, instead of, I've got a gift to share with everybody in this room.
Exactly.
And it's just flipping the perspective to helping versus me.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it shifts the focus of your knowledge and your skill set and your experience from like what I don't have versus what I have. And if you can just like kind of ground yourself to that.
Do you think your stereotype boost theory idea of going, this is what girls are good at, so I'm going to get even better at it? I know it's a way of sort of, do you think that kind of reinforces stereotypes? I mean, is that the risk?
It does, but it also breaks them, right? But what I'm saying is, these are not my concept. It's highly researched. So if you Google it, you will get it, right?
Yeah.
It's highly researched from experts, right? But what I'm saying is, I use it.
Yeah.
I use it to boost myself out of a situation. So like I would feel very nervous, like Joe said, like, being on a show like this, because I don't know what's going to come up, what do I have to comment on, and I kept quiet for some of the places because I'm no expert at that and I don't know the facts.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I think if somebody were to say, like, how can you get out of this imposter syndrome? I mean, technically you can't get out of it, because if you're prone to feeling that, it will take some muscles, like we said the other day about courage muscles, right? So this is like some breakthrough muscles of confidence. And I face it in the fashion brand, like, when women come and they're like, oh, my neck is like this, or my body is like this, or my hips are too big, or my boobs are too big, and so on. And it's like they're trying to hide themselves. And just by hiding themselves in, some oversized or loose clothing, they also stop doing certain things. I know of at least a dozen women who said they stopped going swimming in my own circle because they put on weight. And they don't like how they look in a swimsuit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. I stopped going swimming because every time I got in the water, a crew would try and rescue me, and there'd be a whole protest about saving the whales.
I had the opposite problem. I had Captain Ahab's chasing me with a harpoon.
No, I think what you've said there is really so. Think of what you bring to a room or to a situation, and I think that's a really good example. But I do think we have a self-worth crisis in the world, and you know all the things that we talk about at the moment, all of the climate crisis stuff, all the COVID stuff. If the people who struggle the most within themselves, their self-confidence. You know, every time I run a training course, it's like, why would anyone care what I've got to say? That sort of stuff. To me, it's all linked. I think we've got a self-worth crisis, and I think people have really got to start to look at that within themselves and work out, where did it start? Who put it there? Did you put it there? Did somebody else put it there? Your society, your culture, your religion, is because you're male and you're female, whatever it is, right? Because it just limits everybody so much, doesn't it? You know, and I think it's such a shame. We're losing. There's so many people with so many gifts who just don't have the confidence to get out there and give us their gifts because of that. And
when I look back on my life, and I look back at the imposter comes from the word deceiver, and Latin for deceive. It's basically we feel like we're being a deceiver. We're deceiving people.
Yes.
And I look back on some big areas where I really felt this imposter syndrome. And one of those times was when I was promoted into a position. And you know, the whole Peter principle. So the whole Peter principle is you get promoted because you're competent into a position. And if you're competent, you'll get promoted again, and you'll keep getting promoted until you're in a position where you're incompetent, and then you'll stop being promoted. And so that means everybody who's in whatever position they're in are incompetent. And so, which is quite cool.
For a long time.
Yeah, until eventually they become competent, and then they get promoted into another incompetent position. And if we think, I find that really helpful in one sense, in that is it's the sort of in the fact that everybody is dealing with that uncertainty, in a sense, right? Yes. I've been promoted into a position where I'm uncomfortable, but in that discomfort, I expand. I grow. I can grow into that new position. So then that means there needs to be a period of time in which I can immerse and learn, and that's the honeymoon period of getting to it. But some people, they bluff their way through that, and it gets a little bit struggly, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say don't use that. Don't think of it like bluffing their way through it, because maybe they're just doing stuff, right, to learn new stuff.
I think,
right? So
I think some people immerse themselves. I think some people still bluff. I think some people will use their strengths and charm and all this sort of stuff. I mean, this is why we're having a problem with the politicians.
Yeah,
it's the charm that and their oratory skills, not necessarily their expertise. And then their way of delivering a message sounds like they're an expert, and then they stop listening to the scientists. You know, from one perspective,
many of those probably are not the ones who have imposter syndrome.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's different.
So, or maybe
they're not suffering from that. Right, because typically somebody is suffering from that or faces it in time to time. It may not be something which is with you all the time, but it comes and goes.
Yeah.
And I've found one of the way that you can deal with it is maybe I'll just share one tip or a couple of tips, which is that one is that just think of your life as if it's your job or your career in a company. And then if you can list down everything good that you have done, which you feel good about, and you think that that's an achievement, and it could just be like, okay, I was able to, learn how to, like you went in the Red Can Run, you have started walking and running. Earlier, you didn't do it. Eugene didn't do it, right? But now you have done that, right? So that is an achievement. And if people list all this down, when you feel that, okay, I'm feeling the imposter syndrome, I'm good for nothing, I'm feeling self-doubt, can you just write down what are those areas where you're feeling self-doubt? And you will find that you already have achievements in that area. So you can actually fall back on what you have done. So, having a number of promotions, I also got promoted many times in a period of a few years, right? But it was always because you are stepping out and taking on stuff. And Tim, I remember your talk from 2018 from what was that? What is the other one? The PSS convention. What is the other event?
Speakers Academy.
No, the other one.
The talks.
The talks, yeah.
Raise your game.
Raise your game, yeah.
Raise your game.
Raise your game. Yes, that was my first experience with APSS. And Tim was on stage, and he gave this such a nice construct, which I think is very good for breaking, this whole imposter syndrome. He said, create a report, and he can speak better about it. Create a progress report, which you yourself publish to your manager every month, right? And then you also put it there, what you have done, what do you need help with, and publish it to the guy, whether your manager wants it or not. So by the end of 12 months, one, it is his responsibility to give you support. Second, it's like you would have recorded your achievements, and you will not feel like a fake when asking for promotion or asking for a raise, because you have all the facts with you. So it's like keeping a log, right? Tim, do you remember that?
I'm amazed that you remembered all of that, although the report was supposed to be weekly, so that you would have 48 pieces of evidence that you deserve the pay rise.
Okay,
But
so
that's
I must
amazing.
have made a note that that's too much for me. So I'll just do it monthly.
Very nice. Huh, good. Well, I feel like I've made a difference now. I'm no longer an imposter.
No, but I mean, you think about it, right? A lot of reasons why people stay stuck in their career is because on that time when they're supposed to speak up and say what they have done, they're not able to. One, because they don't have the data. Second, even if they have some recollection of what all they did, maybe they have some list, but they're not able to say it out because they're in that last 2-3%, right? That they don't want to come across as being somebody who faked their way through it.
Yep.
So I think that is a very good strategy, right? To have a kind of a log and reach out in that area where you kind of feel that, oh, I haven't done this, or I can't do it, or I'm not good at it, or I'm losing self-confidence. Go and pull from there.
Yeah. So to add on to that, a nice little one would be, have a document somewhere where when you complete something, this is for yourself in life or at work, when you complete something and you're like, I'm pretty chuffed with that website I just made. Just open up that document and just go, I just completed this website and it was pretty good. And I'd never done it before. And I learned how to do this and it was great, or whatever it is. And just pop it in there and then close the document. And every time you just add to it, and every so often you can just go in there and actually do that sort of reminder of the stuff that you actually have done, because we can diminish the stuff that we have done and accomplished, which I think is what you're saying, right? We can diminish the amazing things we've done.
Yeah. Even if people tell you, you discount it, but if you've made a record of it, it's more likely that you will remember it. Put some smileys.
And you recorded it in the time that you were chuffed.
Like, between 0 to 10, like how good you think it was.
Yep. Yeah. I like that. I do like that. And I think the thing that really spoke to me as you were sharing that was the value of a conversation, because I do recall when I was promoted quickly, when I got to that highest position, I felt I was not qualified to be there. I felt like I didn't have enough time here to feel comfortable enough. And then I got this promotion. And of course the money was great, but I felt like I was very exposed the whole time. That a lot of the time I felt like I was, teetering at the edge of a cliff. But what would have been if I was able to go back in time and speak to myself then, and some people tried to speak to me, would be to be able to confess it to someone, really, in a weird way, is to share with someone, and maybe not your manager, because that could be the career limiting move. It's possibly where coaches get a lot of their work from, but maybe a trusted friend or a colleague, or maybe somebody else in business, and just to be able to share with them, sometimes I feel like an imposter because of this and this and this and this, and get yourself to talk it out, because once it's out, it's no longer in here. And sure, people can go, don't be silly, you're awesome, and you can still not accept it. But in a sense, by saying it out, to sharing it with someone, you kind of are found out because you've shared it with someone. And that takes away the anxiety of that element of it. And then you can start dealing with what's the root of this, which is where you were going before and where Andrea was going as well. It's like, where did this really come from? And oftentimes, and we don't want to be, I mean, I don't really want to be pointing fingers at parents or culture or this or that or everything else, because they are the context in which we are. But I do want to point the finger at myself for how I let that seed take root. And therefore, if I've got accountability over that, I've also got the power to go, you know what? No more. Because if I let it grow, then I'm the gardener. And I can de-weed as well. And I've got the opportunity to go, that was interesting. And I'm going to forgive myself because I was 17 at the time when I let that take root. But now it's time to I don't want to chop down the tree because we'd just be talking environmentalism, but I want to get rid of the virus. Yeah. I want to administer a vaccine on this one, because I don't need to let that rule my life anymore. And some people are living in jobs or doing pieces of work where they're no longer happy, but they're just doing it.
Yeah.
And they're doing it because it was a decision they made when they were 17.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are afraid to change. They're really afraid to change their lanes. Just because they've been doing something for 5 years or invested 5 years, it's like, will I look like a fool to everybody if I now go and say I want to do this? So I went from one of the top tech institutes to a fashion institute. And I haven't really met anybody who did that exact switch till now. And people always ask me about it. Why did you do it? Like, you could have gone to the US and you would be earning like so much money. I said, my heart was not in it. So I think that's another way, that if you're feeling the imposter syndrome, or you're feeling like low confidence about something, you should just say, like, is your heart in it? If your heart is not in it, then you slowly, it may take time, but you can take like a route to walk out of that.
Yeah, start building
I mean,
the
we've
second
been
one.
talking about this a lot, but maybe one last thing. It's like, if you look at the word imposter and break it into 3 parts, and just say to yourself that I am poster girl, poster boy, or whatever. So in whichever area, instead of feeling like an imposter, and you tell yourself that I am poster, but what kind of poster would it be? And I think that could help.
I like that. All right, Anu, you're awesome. Thank you, darling. Let's wrap it up. We're coming up to past the half hour. Any other news that you guys have been paying attention to?
No, I've been crazy busy with all kinds of things, preparing for shows and things like that. So I'm afraid I'm not very much in terms of hearing about new things. Yeah, the Lions were my big story.
The Lions, yeah. Mine was simply Cruise Compass.
Cruise Compass.
Which is the daily activity schedule on the ship. I was just like, which trivia am I going to go to?
Right.
So yeah.
Nice. Anu, have you anything got your attention?
No, not really, Andrea. Like I said, I do feel like an imposter in this room. Right? But that's my one way of saying that, okay, I'm making space for this in my life, and I'm aligning to certain causes, and I'll do more. Right. And I really appreciate what you 3 have been doing, and especially for Andrea. For now, I know her for about 2 years, and I think the work you're doing is so inspirational, because it can only, somebody, like I said, has to be responsible. It has to be somebody's KPI, but they can't get it done if the people are not with them. Yeah. So I think all of us are raising awareness in our own ways to the causes that we care about. And I think we need to talk more, and we need to be a part of more conversations. So thank you for doing this.
No, thank you for coming. But one big piece of news today, breaking just before we jumped on, was Modi has backed down from the what was the year-long farmer protests. Obviously, there's a couple of important elections coming up that factoring into that. But I thought that was pretty good. So let's see what happens with that. Final one. What's keeping you distracted at the moment, apart from the carnival? What was it called? Carnival.
Royal Caribbean.
Yeah. What was the
Oh, Cruise Compass.
Yeah, Cruise Compass, that one.
Yeah, no, got a bunch of stuff actually.
Oh, cool.
But just before I launch into it, Anu, for some reason, the words "Anu you" keep coming up, which is quite cool, right? With what you're talking about as well, with regards to that. And the other thing that which
There's
was
a brand
that,
for you, Dol.
Yeah, and the other thing I was looking at was I was listening to a speech by Michelle Poler, Poler, and she's got this website and YouTube channel and everything else called 100 Days Without Fear, and she just spoke so brilliantly. So the website is 100 like 100 dayswithoutfear.com, and what she did is she challenged herself. And there was another guy that did this as well. I heard it from him a couple of years earlier. Hello Fears, maybe? No, that was Michelle Poler's book. Anyway, there was another guy did it, but because the imposter syndrome is about the fear of getting found out. In a sense, that's the debilitating part of it. And so challenging yourself to come on a show like this when you feel a bit sort of whatever you felt.
I'm not in my space here.
Yeah, is a great is another, or getting up on stage and speaking, or going and doing something, or changing careers, or whatever it is. Changing careers is kind of a big one, but challenging yourself, giving yourself it doesn't have to be 100 days without fear, but giving yourself a challenge of, okay, I'm going to do one thing that I feel a little bit about, and I'm just going to go out there and do something kind of cool and overcome it and challenge myself, for 7 days in a row, 10 days, and just talk about that on social media. That would be a lot better than taking a photo of a food. No, this is not for you. This is for anybody watching, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
I've been hardly posting.
Yeah, it's a cool way to do it. But go and check out Michelle Poler.
Yeah, I will for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
100 Days Without Fear. Keeping you distracted. Okay, so the one I've been watching recently is something called The Mysterious Benedict Society, which is on Disney, I think, Disney Plus. And so we thought we'd watch that with Zoe, and I thought it was just going to be a kids flick sort of thing, and a bunch of kids in this mysterious society. But actually, it is beautifully written and beautifully shot. And Andrea, I think you would really resonate with possibly just the first episode, or maybe the second episode, where they're feeling like there's this thing called the emergency that's happening, and everyone's like, it's the emergency, and they're like, I don't know, I feel this sense of this ill ease. I don't want to say dis-ease, but unease, I guess. And it's quite cool anyway. But the first couple of episodes are really quite nice. And then the other two things are sci-fi. One is Isaac Asimov's Foundation on Apple. I've started watching that, which just looks beautifully shot. And the one my wife is very excited about, which is on Amazon Prime. So now I've covered three broadcasting services. The Wheel of Time, which was some like 17 episode book that she read as a kid. And
they've actually made it.
They've made it, and it looks. So she was playing the preview to me, and I was like, I haven't read the books, but I want to watch that. It looks amazing.
Right, cool.
It looks great. So you've read it, Andrea.
Yeah, but I had to stop reading it because it annoyed me so much, because the way the descriptive language just became, I was always talking about the bustiers and the girls and the striking, fantasy. I'm a huge fantasy reader, but by about, I don't know, book 5, book 6, I just wanted to punch the author in the face.
So this is the one where the knights are fully covered in armor, but the women have just got a skimpy leather thing with a sword.
Yeah. And they're always talking about it. It was just too much.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to watching that. And no, anyway, but it sounds interesting.
Joe, you being distracted?
Well, yes. Besides being distracted with trading and stuff like that, I've also been watching stuff, and it's been a few weeks since I've been able to finish off the show because I've been running off before the ends. So I've been watching 2 shows. One is Arrested Development, which is a bit hard to come by now. I'm not sure where to find it. They were on Netflix for a while because they continued the series with them, but I can't seem to find them on my Singapore app. But the other show, which I thought was interesting if you like sci-fi, is Another Life. It's a 2-season show that was running on Netflix. And what I liked about it is how fast they move through a lot of sci-fi ideas. So the thing with a lot of sci-fi shows is that they try to drag out this one idea for as long as they seem to be able to drag this one idea out. And sometimes the whole series becomes about this one idea.
Yeah.
What was nice about this show, and what is nice about this show, is how they have one grand premise for everything, but along the way, lots and lots of different sci-fi premises come up and addressed and resolved, and it mystifies, and it's a pretty good series, pretty gritty as well. So another life, another life, I think it's called.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds interesting. Anu, podcast, books, anything?
Nothing. Actually, I'm working on something. We're building a new module. So it's all work for me, like 13, 14 hours a day. And so, yeah, really not doing much except like those late night scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or whatever, just to put myself to sleep, get my mind off work and go to sleep. And tomorrow is a new day. So, but hopefully like in January will be better. Right. And I'm looking forward to going to India now that they have lifted the going to lift the, quarantine need for traveling back from India.
Yeah, that's something we should probably talk about next week, Andrea.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's a lot of restrictions are being lifted just as big waves are hitting. So I think we might all be a bit surprised by what's coming up. But anyway, I am very happily watching The Good Doctor. A new season's out. Have you guys ever watched The Good Doctor?
Oh, I love the show.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's a new season out, and
Is that the kid?
it's about Dr. Sean Murphy, who has autism, and he's an incredibly brilliant surgeon. And it's it talks about lots of social issues and social acceptance.
I think that sounds like what Yash would enjoy. So I will tell you.
Yeah. No, it's really brilliant, really brilliant, really well done as well. The actor who plays Sean, I think he's done a phenomenal job. But so still waiting on Grace and Frankie.
Is the doctor like a teenager or something?
No, he's an adult. He looks young, but he's an adult. Yeah, no, it's good. Have a look. All right, so Anu, thank you so much for joining us, especially.
Thank you.
We none of us realised today that was a bit of an imposter syndrome moment, actually just showing up and being part of this. But it's a good a good example.
Sorry, Andrea.
But it's a good example of face your fears and do it anyway, right? And like Joe was saying, even coming onto this, I remember when we first started doing this, I'd been sitting on it for a long time, and it was that who do I think I am sort of moment. I don't think I suffer the imposter syndrome as much, mainly just because I'm confident in my thoughts, and I think that happens more as you get older too. But then I know a lot of people who have gotten older and it's gotten worse. So do the work within yourself. Obviously, go and find help.
And the self-talk. Self-talk.
Yeah, exactly. Find a mentor, find a coach.
Michelle Obama had this quote, right? Like very famous one, which said that confidence, I had learned then, sometimes needs to be called from within. I've repeated this same words to myself many times through many clients. Am I good enough? Yes, I am. And I think that really helps.
Yeah. So thank you. So I'm going to download this as quickly as I can and put it on the Uncommon Courage podcast if you prefer to listen on audio. It's good to have the original team back together after a couple of intense COP26
Oh my God, it was.
Yeah. Don't look at him. He's not pretty. But thanks guys for being here. And
that was quick.
No, it wasn't. We went over time again. No.
I was saying about Tim removing.
Oh, right. Sometimes it feels like it's going. It doesn't feel like we're here for a long time, right?
It doesn't feel like nearly 2 hours. That's for sure.
No, never does. Good chats. All right. You
guys say
goodbye. Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Joe. Thanks everyone for watching.